Hello everyone, welcome to another great Tuesday night book live. Roswell, No Good Deed. I'm Christy, and we're reading chapters 5 and 6. So, as you know, I'm Christy, I'm 34, been watching Roswell pretty much since season 1, at least through midway season 1, and then I caught up for VHS tapes. Big Dreamer fan, big Liz Parker fan. And all around big fan of these books that I now know about. Hello, Rachel, and to everyone hopefully coming in here. I'm just waiting for Michelle. And she is not feeling the best. She's got a muscle cramp in her neck. So she's just going to read the first chapter real quick, and then I'm going to read chapter 6. And we'll see how far we get. We're going to start doing recaps with Jess on Fridays instead of every time we do a live. We're just going to save the recap with Jess for Friday. That works a little bit better so we don't have like so much recap. But I know you all love Jess anyway, so okay. Oh, Rachel has no sound. Uh-oh. Can everyone else hear me? Let's make sure that's happening. Chris, can you hear me? Let's see. Okay, we got a couple more people. Becky and Jody Lynn. Hello, hello. Michelle. Can you guys hear me? I just want to make sure, like, everything's good sound-wise and that it was just Rachel's issue. Okay, good. Good. Okay, great. All right, I'm going to bring Michelle on here, and then I'll tell you a little bit about Invisible People, which is the fundraiser we're doing tonight to raise awareness for that organization. Okay. Vid is freezy. Ooh. Let's see if it's freezy on Michelle's end. Have to work out all the technical difficulties now. Jeez. I'm waiting for Michelle. Oh. Hopefully this is going to happen tonight. I don't know. Sometimes we have a lot of technical difficulties. This might be one of those nights. Hope not. I hope not. I don't know why it's taking so long. Usually Michelle pops on here right away. Okay, now it got better. Michelle, it's taking forever. It just keeps saying it's waiting for you. And usually you pop in here much sooner. Like it takes maybe like 30 seconds, and it's taking like a whole minute. That's not cool. That's not cool. It says you're unable to join. It told me you're unable to join. I don't understand. Okay, now I'm requesting you. Let's see if this works. Yay! Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, something weird's going on with my...
Yeah, I can only see like 3/4 of your face.
Can you see me now? Okay, I just can't turn my head, so I'm like...
You might want to still move it back a little bit. Because I can, like...
Oh. Okay, hold on, I'm moving it. Oh.
Well, that's a new one.
Okay, I'm here. Just...
Hi.
Okay. Hi! Hi! Oh, I'm turning still. Okay. All right. Are we ready?
We are ready. I'm going to put a pinned comment down below for people who are interested. But basically, just real quick, Invisible People is a nonprofit organization that helps homeless people in the United States. It educates the public about homelessness through a lot of stories. A lot of people don't really realize how many different kinds of homelessness there is. It's not just people who are like on drugs and they're homeless. Like, no. Like, it's a lot of people who are, it's like not safe for them to live at home, or for whatever reason, it might not be safe for them. Sometimes it's safer for them to live on the street. So they do it for storytelling, educational resources, and advocacy. So they advocate the government to change public policy to help people who are homeless, and a lot of it is because we don't have affordable housing in the United States. And I know the guy who is head of the Invisible People. He's a really nice guy, and he's actually helped a lot of the homeless people on Twitter that I know and I talk to. So, all right, that about covers it. So,
All right,
here
we go.
Away with chapter 5.
Roswell, No Good Deeds, chapter 5. I don't know why I say that so dramatically. March 24th, Scottsdale, Arizona. Katie no longer looked like she belonged in her bedroom. Chad Newcomb closed the curtains of the window closest to the bed so that the sun wouldn't fall across Katie's eyes. He kept the other windows open, though, so that she could see the desert garden they planted together the summer before. Not that it mattered. The morning had left her exhausted. It had left him exhausted as well, but he had strength to spare. She didn't. She looked so small and frail in her bed, the pink frills that he and Maggie had picked out for her nearly enveloping her. Chad sat on the side of the bed, sinking into the thick mattress. His body ached with exhaustion. He'd pulled a muscle in his back just that morning, and it spasmed now, making him wince. He brushed a strand of hair off of Katie's face. She didn't even move. Her skin was hot to the touch, and her eyes were so recessed into her face that she almost didn't look human anymore. Maybe he shouldn't have brought her home after all. As the doctor had said, caring for her was a full-time job, more than full-time. It took vigilance every hour out of 24. And Chad had to do it alone. Am I cutting out?
No.
Okay. Every time I look up, my lips are moving, but nothing's coming out.
Uh-oh. Oh, you're fine, my end.
Okay. Maybe he shouldn't have brought her home. Okay, I got that. And Chad had to do it alone. He wiped his clammy hands on his knees. He wished Maggie were here. She would be able to tell him what to do. He wished someone could. The doctor had tried, but that man had lost his credibility with Chad a month ago. They thought Katie had a new viral disease, a mutant strain of some deadly childhood illness. The aggressive treatment had made her worse. So then they figured it was an obscure form of leukemia, but leukemia never showed up in her blood tests. In fact, all that showed up in her blood tests were elevated levels of white blood cells, which would be what happened whenever the body was fighting an infection. Then the doctor said that she might have caught a strand of a difficult-to-kill virus that lurked in hospitals, made stronger because of all the antibacterial agents used in hospitals as well as antibiotics. He proclaimed antibiotics useless against Katie's disease and took her off the regimen. She nearly died that night. From that moment on, Chad had sought second and third opinions, all of them expressing bafflement. One doctor wanted to fly Katie to the world-famous Mayo Clinic. Another wanted to check her heart. Still, a third believed that she was suffering from some lifelong vitamin deficiency, which led her to incredible thinness. Chad could explain the thinness. Katie hadn't eaten properly since Thanksgiving. Her body wasn't taking in any nutrition despite the IVs that the hospital kept attached to her arm, part of the time anyway. The rest of the time, they forced her to eat regular food, apparently afraid she'd become unable to. She had been on the food part of the cycle this week. That was one of the reasons he felt all right about removing her from the hospital. They weren't doing anything there that he couldn't do at home. He kept thinking back to the Christmas miracle, finding his mind going over and over the if-onlys. He had told the doctor that he wanted Katie to die at home. The doctor had said that Katie would die at home if Chad took her anyway. But Chad knew better. He had brought article after article he downloaded from the internet to the hospital, asking the doctor to try new things. And the doctor had refused. So had the second and the third opinion doctors and all the others he had called. Some of them had used the phrase false hope, while others used the word scam. And they used those terms no matter what he brought to them. It seemed that they found any form of experimentation or alternative medicine illegitimate and not worthy of their time. But this wasn't their time that was being lost. It was Katie's. She was dying, and somehow Chad had to stop it. He brushed his hand over her hot little face one more time and stood. The movement was difficult. The sore muscles in his legs had gotten stiff in the short time he'd been sitting. He had no idea how he'd let himself get so out of shape. Apparently 4 months without exercise is taking its toll. He glanced at the IV leaning against the wall. He had it if he needed it, along with the nutrient bags. It was amazing how much medical paraphernalia a person could buy on the internet. He even found pharmacies that would sell him medication without double-checking the signatures or the prescriptions he faxed. He got enough stuff to keep Katie going here for a little while at least. Reaching to the nightstand, he grabbed the baby monitor that he and Maggie had bought when Maggie was pregnant with Katie and turned it on. Then he left the room, picking the other monitor up off the hallway table where he left it. He made sure he turned that monitor on as well. He told Katie that he was going to do this, that this was how she would find him no matter where he was. Not that he ever planned to leave her side for long. He went into the dining room and hit the spacebar on his computer. The screensaver, a drawing Katie had made the year before, disappeared and his email program popped up. He had left it open to the letter he'd received that morning before he'd gotten Katie from the hospital. Chad stared at the letter again, feeling the same confusion he had felt when he opened the letter. Confusion and strength at the same time. He finally had 2 chances to save his daughter. 2, not 1. The letter was from a researcher who claimed he had a serum that would cure most childhood diseases. The researcher said he had been the man behind the Christmas miracle at the hospital. He'd used his serum there, even though it hadn't been approved by the FDA, because he'd known it would work. He wanted to get the word out because the drug companies and the hospitals were preventing anyone from using the cure. Chad remembered finding information on this man, feeling that the researcher was irresponsible. What if the stuff hadn't worked? And a hero, because the stuff had worked all at the same time. He double-checked the guy's credentials on the internet, made sure the man was legit, and then he'd sent the money. $15,000 was a lot of cash, no matter how rich a man was. It made him uncomfortable to send that much money through the mails, but he could afford to lose it. Even if he couldn't afford to lose it, he would have sent it. After all, Katie's life was priceless. If he had to spend $15 million to save her, he'd find the cash somehow. He would do anything for her, but that had been days ago and he hadn't heard. He'd logged on 2 and 3 times an hour hoping to hear something, but as the days went by, he became convinced he was the victim of a scam. After he'd already given up and moved on to a new plan, he got this morning's email. It was a letter from the researcher. He had gotten Chad's money and wanted to deliver the serum. It was apparently illegal to send unapproved drugs through the mail, and the researcher didn't want to put Chad in jeopardy from the law, not a man with a sick child. The researcher probably didn't want to put himself in jeopardy either, but Chad still appreciated the restraint. He printed out the letter with its instructions to the delivery site and stared at them for a moment. The email had been sent this morning. He logged on, sent an email saying he'd be at the delivery site, and logged off. He had no idea how he'd go there with Katie so ill, but he'd find a way. There was always a way. The phone rang. Chad started. The ringer sounded loud, even though he had turned it down so that it wouldn't disturb Katie. He sat very still as the ringing continued until his answering machine in the kitchen picked up. He heard his own voice mixing with Katie's, a 6-month-old tape he sometimes replayed when he was really feeling hopeless, just so that he could hear her fluted giggle at the tape's end. Then their voices ended, followed by the digital beep, and a familiar male voice spoke softly into the machine. Chad only caught a few words, but he didn't have to listen. He knew what the message would be. He had already gotten 2 others like it on the machine. It was Katie's doctor, begging Chad to bring her back to the hospital. The doctor was afraid she'd die without continued treatment. So was Chad, but the treatment the doctor had been giving her wasn't consistent, and it was time for Chad to try new things. Maybe this weekend would mark the point at which Katie would finally turn around, finally get better. He had 2 chances now, and that was 2 chances more than he'd had yesterday. The machine clicked off and Chad stood. He grabbed the baby monitor, holding it to his ear for a moment. Katie's breathing sounded even and regular, just like it used to when she was in her crib. He knew that was a lie. Her breathing might have been even, but nothing about her was regular anymore. Sometimes he sat up in the house late at night, listening to its creaks and ticks, realizing that Katie might be stuck forever as a child, never to go to high school, kiss a boy, get married, or have children of her own. She would never get the chance to succeed at a career or yell at her father or have an intellectual debate. She'd never have a chance to grow old. He couldn't allow that. Maggie hadn't got a chance to grow old. The last thing he wanted, the last thing Maggie would have wanted, was for the same thing to happen to their child. Chad was shaking. He'd never flown solo like this before. He was doing things he would have thought crazy 2 years ago, sending cash through the mail on a desperate hope, taking a child out of the hospital against the doctor's orders, and then everything he had done last night. He walked down the hallway and peered into Katie's room. She hadn't moved. The sunlight had, though. It was covering her legs, illuminating that bright pink bedspread, making it seem almost neon. Chad smiled at her, even though he knew she couldn't see him, and then continued past her room to the guest room. The curtains were still drawn in this room, making it seem like twilight. Still, he could make out the form on the bed, the young man he'd taken from Roswell last night. The boy, really, because up close he looked even younger than he had that night in the hospital. It had been quite a struggle to get him here. Even though Chad was athletic, he wasn't used to carrying a tall teenager over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes. Nor was he used to putting that teenager into the trunk of his car. The shaking grew worse, and he thought about all he'd done, all of the laws he'd broken, for Katie. It was all for Katie, and if she lived, it would all be worthwhile.
All right. Do you want to go off and rest?
Yes. Did you see me like, ah? Sorry, everybody, I have a pulled muscle in my neck, so thank you for letting me read, and I think that Christy's taking over from here.
Yes. Please rest and feel better and come around. Okay. Everyone say a prayer for Michelle. I feel so bad that her neck hurts so bad. I know what that's like because I've slept wrong before and then my back hurts and neck hurts and it's not a fun time. Not a fun time. Hello, Deborah. All right, and hello to everyone who's joined. While we've been here, I think I'm going to keep going and I'm going to pray that Instagram does not boot me off. I took my phone off my phone charger because I noticed my phone was getting really hot. And one time when it was getting really hot like that, it overheated and that's why it booted me. So I think I have enough juice on my phone to keep going. So I'm going to keep going and I'm going to read chapter 6 and hopefully Instagram cooperates with me so I don't have to reread 5 and 6. I'm actually seeing how long 6 is, and it's kind of a long chapter, so forgive me if I have to take a break and take a sip of water. Coke, really. It's actually a really long chapter. Oh my god, it's like 20 pages. Okay, we're going to do this. All right, we're going to do this. All right. It's okay. I've read 20 pages out loud before. I can do this. All right. Chapter 6, guys. March 24th, Roswell, New Mexico. Neela Spence settled into her booth in the funkiest diner she'd ever been in, and that was saying something. The crash town had space burgers that were covered with little green goo. It served out-of-this-world shakes, and the menus claimed it spoke the universal language of pie. Thank you, Michelle. I see your encouragement. She wasn't going to try that. Her arteries had hardened the moment she breathed the air in this place. Unfortunately, the air smelled good. The burgers looked thick and charbroiled, and the fries crispy. Even the salads looked delicious and artsy busting. Oh, and artery busting. Artery busting, not artsy. Artery busting. Piled high with meat and hard-boiled eggs and so much cheese that she had to search for the lettuce. She hadn't ordered any of that, although she was tempted to have a shake. The weather balloon, with its silvery photograph, looked the most tempting. A delicious mix of vanilla and blueberry ice creams mixed with a secret ingredient guaranteed to linger on the tongue, in the memory, forever. Someone had had an attack of the cutes writing the menu and had done a really good job. Just like they'd done with the decor. She particularly liked the waitress uniforms, done in 50s diner drab blue, covered with a silvery apron and silver headbands, complete with a bobbing antenna. The best part about the outfits was the waitresses seemed comfortable in them. In Phoenix, she knew, waitresses always apologized for the way they looked, even when they were wearing more or less normal outfits. She couldn't imagine how they'd feel in this getup. Neela reached in her bag and pulled out her laptop, shoving aside 2 nearly empty bottles of Tabasco sauce, a full ketchup, salt, and pepper shakers, and an old-fashioned napkin holder just to make room. She had to make notes about this place. She wasn't sure how she'd use it, but she knew she would. Local color was what made feature writing into an art, and Roswell had a lot of local color. She'd spent the morning looking at the goofy tourist shops with their alien heads in a jar, glowing green alien dolls, and I'm from another planet bumper stickers. Somehow she'd expected those places. But she hadn't expected such seriousness in the UFO museum. She paid the small entry fee to wander through it, even though its proprietor, Brody, had made it clear that he couldn't see her until later in the day. She wanted to get a sense of the way this man spent his days. She'd spoken to Davis on the phone before she'd made the almost 7-hour drive from Phoenix. His accent had surprised her. She hadn't expected him to be British. She'd expected his politeness, but not his firmness when he turned down the interview. Mr. Davis, she had said, it's your chance to tell your story. It's not my story, he had said. It's Sydney's, and she's too young to be the focus of any kind of attention. I didn't let the local TV reporters talk to her, and I'm not letting you talk to her either. Mr. Davis, what I'm doing here is deep background. I work for a legitimate newspaper. I don't use quotes unless I can verify the fact with two other sources. The experiences of a little girl, one who had, hours before, been quite ill, probably won't qualify. Pretty words, he had said, but I won't trust my daughter's privacy to probably and maybes. Neela had met with this kind of resistance many times in her career. How about this? Let me send you some clippings so that you can see my work. You know I'm legitimate then. I'll also send you the name and number of the features editor and some of the other editors I worked for freelance. I don't do sensational stories, Mr. Davis. Then why are you doing this? He'd asked, and she had smiled, knowing he was hooked. Because something or someone healed those children that night, she had said. I want to find out who or what it was. She didn't tell him about the doctor she had discovered on the internet, the man who claimed to be behind the entire event. She'd stumbled upon his site while doing an article on local scam artists, and its reasoned, calm approach to medicine had alarmed her. People in desperate situations often believed in absurd things. Those people were the ones most likely to be taken in by scams like this one. She had finished her general article, then downloaded the website's homepage and taken it to her editor. For her editor, it was the Phoenix connection that made the story relevant. The paper was already in trouble for not covering the Christmas miracle, at least not in any meaningful way. They had done a 6-paragraph article on page 15 in the Metro section, explaining that a ward full of children had gotten well on Christmas Eve, and those children attributed their recoveries to an angel. The local TV stations and the rival paper had played up the news big time. People wrote letters to her paper complaining that the paper hadn't given it space, and the city desk editor had to write an editorial defending his choice not to cover the story. It was sensationalism of the worst sort, he had said. There were no facts to support a Christmas miracle. People got well all the time. Just because there had been a disturbance on the ward and the children felt better didn't mean it was time to start believing in Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, and angels who selectively healed a ward full of sick children. That, of course, had been the worst thing he could have written, even if it was true. Journalism's pendulum had swung again, and things like facts were getting in the way of all the bunk people wanted to believe. The paper lost some subscribers over its handling of the Christmas miracle, and was looking for a way to get those subscribers back. Neela had been aware of all this peripherally. Hold on. I'm tripping over a word again. Neela had been aware of all of this peripherally, of course, but it hadn't been on her mind when she brought the printout of the homepage to her editor. However, it was on his. He wanted her to find out the secret to the Christmas miracle, no matter how long it took, and he wanted a series of articles on what was clearly a scam, designed to bilk the sick and the despondent. This was the kind of story she liked the best, one that would cure ills and expose wrongdoing. It was the reason she had become a journalist in the first place. Hi. A husky voice brought her out of her reverie. One of the waitresses, a tired teenage girl with chocolate-colored eyes, looked at her expectantly. She held a notepad in her slender hands. Are you ready to order? Yeah, Neela said. I take it you don't have any low-fat food. The girl laughed. We did, but we took it off the menu. No one ever bought it. I guess when people come to a diner, they want burgers and fries. True enough. Neela wasn't feeling like bucking the trend. How's the Galaxy Burger? Spicy with the pepper jack cheese, the waitress said, but it's one of our most popular items. The door opened behind her, and she looked over her shoulder, her expression taut. Neela frowned. The waitress, whose badge said her name was Liz, seemed nervous, almost on edge, as if she expected something bad to happen. Is everything all right? Neela asked. Yeah, Liz said, but there was no conviction in her voice. A couple walked into the restaurant, and she relaxed slightly as if they were not who she was expecting. What do you want to drink? Well, I've been toying with one of those shakes. Liz smiled. It lit up her entire face and made her beautiful, despite her exhaustion. They're good, but they're not low fat. I don't care. One in Roswell, you know. No, Liz said, puzzled. I don't. Neela sighed. Kids weren't learning the right things anymore. I was mingling an old quote, one in Rome, do what the Romans do, or something like that. Oh. Liz held her pen over her ticket book. Did you want a shake then? I guess so, Neela said. How's the weather balloon? A little gimmicky. Our double chocolate is better. It would kill me, Neela said. Let's go with old-fashioned vanilla, shall we? All right. Liz pocketed her ticket book. Is there anything else? Yes, Neela said. What is it that Roswellians do on a beautiful Saturday? Liz shrugged. I'm always working. And then she walked away. Neela watched her go. Liz picked up the order, but before she started to shake, she picked up the phone. Neela started to look away. After all, she'd been a teenage girl once, and she knew what it was like to have a phone super glued to the ear. But something made her hesitate. Maybe it was the serious expression on Liz's face. She punched in a number and waited, clearly listening to rings. When she got no answer, she put the phone down and glanced out the window again. Neela recognized the expression. The girl was worried about something, so worried that it was affecting her work. What could cause a pretty local girl to seem so upset on such a lovely day? And why should Neela care? After all, she was here to talk with Brody and Sydney Davis, and then she'd go back to Phoenix. But once a reporter, always a reporter. Every little thing intrigued her. There was a story in the smallest worry. Neela grinned at herself. Liz, the waitress, was probably wondering why her boyfriend hadn't called her, or what time her date was for later that evening. Teenagers always blew things way out of proportion, and that was what Neela was in danger of doing if she wasn't careful. She settled back into the booth and reviewed her notes. She had done a lot of research before coming to Roswell, and she had uncovered the reason for Brody Davis's reluctance to let his daughter speak with a reporter. It seemed that Brody Davis had spoken to a few reporters himself, and the experience hadn't been a good one, at least for Davis. He was rich and obsessed by UFOs, so obsessed, in fact, that he claimed to have been abducted himself. His obsession with aliens had brought him to Roswell and led him to buy the UFO Center, which, until Davis's purchase, had been a little more than a cheesy museum for tourists, although the previous owner had himself been a believer. Some people claim that Brody Davis used the UFO Center as a cover for research he was doing into the entire phenomenon, and that he cared little for the museum part. He had an entire secret room in the back, filled with the latest equipment, most of it designed, depending on which source she read, for either protection against UFOs or calling them back to Earth. When she'd initially called Davis, she had known most of this, and so her promise not to do an interview had bordered on repertorial manipulation. But now she knew her series of features on the Christmas Miracle could be comprised by the mere presence of Brody Davis and his daughter Sydney. Neela had a hunch the two of them would remain deep background. Liz brought her the vanilla shake and glanced curiously at Neela's laptop but didn't say anything. She returned to the waitress station and picked up the phone again. Neela frowned at her. Before she left, she'd asked what was going on if she could figure out a way to do it, but she had more important things to concentrate on, such as a way to get the notoriously closed-mouthed Brody Davis to talk with her candidly. She looked through the plate glass window. The UFO Center's quirky building was barely visible from her booth. It looked innocuous enough. She wondered how it would feel for poor Sydney to grow up as the only child of an eccentric rich man in a small town obsessed with UFOs. Neela smiled. That was one question she wouldn't ask. As she watched, she saw a blonde leave the UFO Center. The blonde stopped by a Jetta, opened the door, threw something inside, and then strode towards the crashdown. She got closer. Her features came into perspective. She was pretty, not in the delicate way that Neela's waitress was, but in a pouty, old-fashioned style that seemed to have gone out of vogue recently. She was also younger than she appeared initially, and she seemed as upset as the waitress had been. The girl yanked open the crashdown's door and practically flung herself across the floor. Neela wasn't sure she had seen anyone walk with such determination. Has he answered the phone? Her voice carried across the diner. Maria! Liz hung up the phone. She seemed surprised, and then her expression fell. He wasn't there. And Brody hasn't seen him? Neela's ears perked up at the mention of Brody's name. In fact, this Maria was saying, Brody hasn't seen anyone for a while. He's been working on some new project. He's ordering special equipment, and it's supposed to arrive in May. He's really excited about it, and I couldn't get him to shut up long enough to answer any questions. So he doesn't know where Michael is? No. Marie sat on one of the counter stools. He said he didn't know how to use his current equipment to check. He didn't even volunteer to help look, Liz. I thought he would, He seems kind of, interested, Liz said. Yeah, Marie nodded. Interested. Like Neela was. She continued to look at her computer screen while she watched out of the corner of her eye. That's why, Liz said. I'll bet he'd be happy if Michael just slept your life. You think? Maria seemed buoyed by this news. Yeah, I do. Maria sighed. Has anyone else reported back yet? Not yet, Liz said. I tell you, this has been the hardest shift of my life. I'm having trouble concentrating. I've been forgetting orders and missing customers. You don't want to help, do you? You think you're a mess? Maria said. I do all of that on a good day. Neela scrolled down her screen, wondering who Michael was and why they all cared that he was missing, and what Brody Davis had to do with all of it. She would have to focus on Davis anyway. She had more than enough questions for him. She wanted to know if he was anywhere near the room when the angels showed up. She'd seen the angels, two men in intern blue, walking down the hallway having a heated conversation. Their movements, grainy and partially unfocused, had been caught by the hospital security camera. The whole thing had unfolded as a mini-drama, which had fascinated Neela the first time she saw it. The two men talking, they wanted them disappearing into the room while the others stood watch. A nurse spoke to the remaining man, then left, coming back a short time later with the police. The man panicked, knocked on the door, and finally let himself inside, covering up the small window and blocking the door until he and his friends could make an escape. The tape, it seemed to Neela, was the best proof that the guy on the internet was running the scam. Both men had nothing in their hands as they walked down the hallway. They seemed agitated, almost as if they were arguing, and it was clear that the guy who stood outside the door was nervous. If they had perpetrated a scam using some kind of serum or something, then where had they carried it? One of her follow-up questions to all the parents had been whether or not the healing was permanent. She knew of some scams, very old scams, that used drugs which caused a quick sugar rush or a slight recovery that would disappear over time. Enough time had passed to make any false medication reveal itself. So far, though, none of the children she found had relapsed, which was good news. The strangest part of the whole thing, though, was the children's insistence that they'd seen an angel, and that the angel had left a silver handprint on their stomachs. There was nothing about a silver handprint on the website. When Neela returned to Phoenix, she would contact the police department and see if there was any record of that handprint. Sometimes the police kept details of an event to themselves so they could later use it to catch one of the perpetrators. The silver handprint seemed like one of those details. A burger, stacked so high that it looked like it was about to topple over, appeared in front of her. Neela's stomach growled. She looked up at Liz. She looked up as Liz set her ticket near the plate. It's just a formality, Liz said. I'm a little distracted today. Yeah, I gathered that, Neela said. Is something wrong? One of our friends has disappeared, Liz said. People are searching for him. How long has he been gone? Neela asked. Since last night. No one knows where he is. Too soon to call the police, huh? Neela said, trying to sound sympathetic. Liz nodded. What's he look like? Maybe I've seen him. At that moment, the door to the restaurant opened again. A short blonde entered. Liz's attention left Neela. Tess, where's Max? Parking, said the blonde. She tugged at her purse over her shoulder. Her hands were stained black, and she had a black streak on one cheek. He'll be here in a minute. He wasn't there, was he? Maria asked as she came close. No, Tess said. It doesn't look like anyone's been there for a long time. That's a good thing, right? Liz remained near Neela's table. Tess gave her a reassuring look. Neela recognized it. The look two men and women gave each other when they wanted to be friends, but something was in the way. Generally a man. Yeah, Tess said. That's a good thing. Except for Michael. Maria peered out the door. Something's happened to him. It's too soon to know that, Tess said. Neela ate one of her fries. It was crispy and good, just like she suspected it would be. She continued to watch the three girls, wondering why there wasn't an adult involved in all of this. If a boy was missing, even a teenage boy, shouldn't an adult be as frantic as these girls were? The frantic adult was probably out searching. That's what Neela would be doing if it were her son. Where did Max park? Siberia? Maria asked. He's coming, Tess said. Did you hear from anyone else? Sheriff Valenti called a while ago, Liz said. He hasn't heard anything. Kyle, Alex, and Isabel aren't back yet, Maria said. That's funny, Tess said. They didn't have as far to go as we did. Neela squished her burger with her fingers so that it would fit into her mouth. She took a big bite and then moaned softly. She hadn't had a burger this good in years. She was glad she didn't live in this town. There didn't seem to be a lot of other restaurants that looked as good, and she didn't cook. She'd be wearing burger, fries, and shake on her hips in no time. She continued to eat and scan her notes while eavesdropping with half an ear. The girls were testy, Maria in particular, but Liz's voice had an edge whenever she spoke to Tess. Finally, Maria said, There's Max. The door opened and Neela looked up. Then she froze. She'd seen the handsome, dark-haired young man before. In fact, she had a digital copy of a surveillance tape with his face all over it. He looked older and more comfortable in his blue jeans and t-shirt, but it was clearly the same person. Max, the girls had called him. No sign, I take it? He said to Maria. None, she said. This isn't like him, Max said. Liz went to his side. Tess bowed her head and stepped back, making room. Interesting. So Neela had been right. There was a boy between them, and it was this one. The square-shouldered, strong-looking boy with a deep voice and worried eyes. Everything was all right at the, Liz let her voice trail off. Yeah, Max said. Nothing unusual there. And Neela had the odd sense he was talking about something other than the missing boy. She glanced at Tess, who serendipitously wiped the black streak from her face. The movement looked almost guilty. What was going on here? Neela's heart was pounding. She hadn't expected to find anyone from the surveillance state, not here in Roswell. The scam's P.O. box was in Arizona. She had to take this very carefully. The last thing she wanted to do was frighten off any of these kids. You sound worried, Liz said to Max. Max nodded. Michael would have called in by now if he could. You know that. He's gone off on his own before, but he's never left us in the lurch like this, not without knowing where he is. Neela took a handful of fries and pushed her plate away. Obviously, Max and his friends lived in this town. She would have time to find out all she needed, if she didn't alienate anyone, if she was careful. She finished her shake. It was too good to waste, and closed her laptop. She casually packed up her equipment so that no one could see what she had been doing. There's got to be something we missed, Max said. Some kind of clue about where he is. People don't just vanish. Yes, they did. They did all the time, usually on purpose. Neela saw it every day in her work, but she wasn't about to speak up and call attention to herself. We already checked the apartment, Liz said. But you were looking for him, Tess said. You weren't looking to see what happened to him. That's true, Maria said, turning away from the window. We didn't look that closely, Liz. Liz nodded, her expression serious. Neela could tell she didn't like to be contradicted by Tess. Such undercurrents here. Maybe they were all nervous because of the Christmas scam. Maybe they know more than they were telling, and they were worried for this Michael's health. They certainly seemed to be overreacting to the disappearance of a teenage boy who hadn't been gone a full day yet. But they had said the sheriff was involved. That seemed even stranger, especially if they were involved in something illegal. Suppose we could go back to the apartment, Liz said. There's probably stuff we missed. I'll go, Max said, a fresh pair of eyes and all that. Me too, Tess said, a little too quickly. Liz looked down, but not before Neela saw the annoyance in her expression. Neela picked up her ticket. I'll drive, Marie said. You don't mind, do you, Max? Neela stood. She wasn't far from them. She decided. She played the old-fashioned way. Still in love with your friend, huh? She asked Liz. Liz shook her head. You know, sometimes people just go away for a while. I know, Liz said. She didn't seem as friendly as she had been a moment ago. In fact, all of the teenagers had stiffened as if Neela's questions made them nervous. Look, Neela said, her gaze meeting Max's. She almost took a step back. He had very powerful eyes. She hadn't expected that. She'd only seen that a few times, when she interviewed the governor and when she met a rebel leader from South America who was trying to raise funds for his guerrilla war. Not crazy eyes, just eyes that held a strength that most people couldn't claim. Yes? He asked. She caught herself sounding uncertain. She never sounded uncertain. It was bad for finding out information. I was supposed to meet a man named Max Harris here about an hour ago. That's not you, is it? No, he said. She cursed silently. She shouldn't have asked the yes or no question. I mean, because I heard them call you Max. And I just thought that with all that's going on, maybe you'd forgotten or decided that I'm not the person for the job and are trying to let me down easy by pretending not to show up. She gave him a hopeful smile. I'm not Max Harris, he said. His last name is Evans, Liz said. Tess glared at her, but no one else seemed upset. Then color flushed Liz's cheeks. Why didn't anyone want Neela to know Max's last name? That intrigued her, but she didn't let the emotion show. Do you know a Max Harris? She asked them, hoping that they didn't, since she had made the name up on the spot. No. Tess's tone bordered on rude. She crossed her arms. Isn't this a strange place for a job interview? Not in the new economy, Neela said. They all looked confused. I'm a consultant, Neela said, filling out her story. Apparently he works at home. I usually don't meet strange men in their homes. It's just safer this way. Tess nodded, but she still looked suspicious. Maria hadn't been paying any attention at all. Liz's cheeks were still red. Max's strong gaze was still on Nina, as if he could see through her eyes. Well, she said in a voice that sounded a little too cheerful. Thanks for your help. I've got a few more meetings, so I'm on my way. Good luck finding your friend. Thanks, Tess said, that undertone of hostility and overtone now. Neela repressed the urge to give the girl a hard look, then went to the counter to pay the bill. She had to wait for Liz, who rang her up without comment. I didn't mean to upset people, Neela said. You didn't, Liz said. I was just hoping that you knew Max Harris. I know, Liz said. We were just stressed, you know? It sounded like an apology. I know, Neela said. Thanks for everything. And then she left, even though she didn't want to. She wanted to hang around and follow this Max Evans wherever he was going. But she wasn't going to. She was going to see what she could learn about him and his family first, about his friends, about his connections to this town, and to Phoenix, as well as other places in Arizona. She was great at research. She'd find out what she was looking for, then she might follow Max Evans, or she might interview him. but not until she was ready, not until she knew more about him than he knew about himself. Hello to anyone joining while I was reading. I'm going to continue to read. This is a very long chapter. That was weird, Tess said. She crossed her arms and watched the petite woman walk down the sidewalk. The woman was staring at the UFO center. I don't like it. I don't either, but we have to focus on Michael, Max said. You shouldn't have told her Max's name, Tess said to Liz. I'm sorry, Liz said. I wasn't thinking. She was fishing for it. Tess knew she was pushing too hard, but Liz was never cautious enough. If she had grown up on the run like Tess had, always watching her back, she would know better than to blurt out things to strangers. It seemed that way, didn't it? Max said, looking out the window, too. Tess went outside and watched the woman get into a dusty sedan. It had Arizona license plates. Max, Maria, and Liz came out and stood beside her. Do you think she has something to do with Michael's disappearance? Maria asked. I have no idea, Max said. It's time to get an idea, Tess said. I'm going to follow her. Tess, Max said. You can't. You're the one she's interested in. But I'm going to. Let me have your keys. She held out her hand. After a moment, Max handed her the keys to his Jeep. She hurried down the street and got in, even as she heard Liz's voice behind her apologizing to Max. Liz's voice grated on Tess, even though she tried hard not to let it. She didn't want it to grate. She wanted to get along. She tried. Max had relationships that predated her, sort of anyway. Relationships that were important to him. She had to respect them, most of the time, except when the people in those relationships did something that might harm Max. She turned the Jeep around and hurried down the road, nearly missing a lime green VW Bug, which honked loudly. Tess winced. She had a hunch Max would never let her drive his car again. But she didn't care. She slipped into traffic, glad that there wasn't much in this part of Roswell. She had a hunch she knew where the woman was going. Out-of-state plates driving in this direction generally had only one destination, Roswell's very tiny motel strip. Sure enough, Tess caught sight of the sedan as it turned into the nicest chain hotel in Roswell. The woman parked, pulled out her purse and her heavy shoulder bag, and hurried inside. Tess parked near the car, got out, and followed her. The hotel's lobby still smelled of fresh paint. The place was new enough to have a not-lived-in look. The hotel clerk was an assistant coach at the high school. Tess didn't participate in sports, but the clerk seemed to recognize her. Her smile was warm. May I help you? Yeah, Tess said, not sure yet what she was going to do. Did you see a woman come through here just a minute ago? The clerk nodded. The oh-so-important reporter? She's one of our guests. Reporter? Tess felt a chill run down her back. What do you mean, oh-so-important? The clerk shook her head. She's made it clear since she arrived yesterday that everything has to be just so. She needs an extra line in her room for her modem. She expected to have a fax. She needed a current phone book. And she wanted to know everything there was to know about that weird guy at the UFO Center. Brody? Tess asked. The clerk nodded. Do you want me to buzz her room? Tess frowned. No. She told me she was looking for a job, but I guess she's not, huh? No. The clerk rolled her eyes. She's from some Phoenix newspaper. Even showed me her credentials when she checked in, since they're paying the bill. Oh, Tess said. My mistake, I guess. The clerk frowned. Kind of strange that she told you she was looking for a job. Is she investigating something? I don't know, Tess said, but she said she was meeting someone at Crashdown for a consulting job interview. Maybe we should tell Brody, the clerk said. Tess nodded. That might be a good idea. What's her name? Technically, I'm not supposed to tell you, the clerk said. I won't let anyone know where I got the information, Tess said. In fact, you don't have to tell me if you want to call Brody yourself. No, I better not from here anyway. The clerk hit the keyboard on the computer below the desk. Tess heard the keys click. Her name is Neela Spence. She's apparently a pretty big deal. Won some kind of award for investigative reporting. That was precisely what Tess didn't want to hear, but she tried not to look too upset. Thanks. I'll go see him right now. Probably a good idea, the clerk said as Tess left the hotel. Her breath was coming in short gasps, and she was more nervous than she thought. She got into Max's Jeep and had trouble starting it, turning the ignition twice, and being rewarded with that horrible scrapey sound the engine made when it was already on. She wouldn't tell Max about that. Then she backed out of her parking space and drove away quickly, hoping that Neela Spence wasn't looking out her fancy hotel window. She'd be wondering why one of the kids from the diner had followed her, and that would lead to more questions. And more questions was exactly what they didn't need. And that's chapter 6. Whew, that was a lot. That was a lot. I want to see the next chapters. It's long. It's not. It's like 10 pages. This is the next chapter. And then chapter 8 is a little bit longer, like 15. Tess. That's funny. She's like not going to tell. Tess is not going to tell Max about the car sound. Really? Don't you like love Max and you really want to be with him? You wouldn't tell him about his car? Because you're afraid he's not going to let you drive it again? Like, that seems kind of silly to me, but okay. That was interesting. The thing with Tess and Liz, though, that was some good stuff. Thank you. I love reading out loud. It kind of brings me back to my childhood. I used to do it a lot when I was a kid. I would actually like go to hotels with my parents and I would get out the Gideon Bible that's always in the nightstand in hotel rooms, and I would get it out and I would go to the bathroom and I would sit on the toilet and I would read the Bible aloud. Of course, by the time I got to like chapter 3 of Genesis, I'd be like, okay, I'm bored. I'm done. Because it's really hard to start the Bible from the beginning and read all the way through. It's better to start in the New Testament. That's what I recommend anyway. But yeah, I love reading out loud. So it's good stuff. I hope you guys enjoyed. So we're going to have Jess do a recap on Friday instead of tonight. So it's a little bit different. So we'll be reading the next 2 chapters, 7 and 8, on Friday. And then Jess will do her recap then. And then, as you know, Saturday we're doing Into the Woods rewatch party. 6 p.m. Central on Saturday. And then Sunday, 1 p.m. Central for the Zoom meetings. And you can DM me for that info if you've never been and want to join me and Leonard. So. Oh, Rachel said, you never tell your man you crank the engine like that. Oh, okay. I don't know. Yeah. Well, she's dumb, right? So I agree with Laura. Tess is dumb. Yeah. No to Tess. We don't like Tess. No one likes Tess. So, all right. Well, I guess we'll end it here. But thank you for the $5 donations for Invisible People. Definitely read up more about them. The guy, the founder, Mark, definitely is out for helping those in need. He helps homeless people on Twitter all the time. I actually speak to a couple homeless people on Twitter who have like really amazing stories, and I like organizations that help them in need. And so then, and I even try to help them myself personally when I can, because I feel awful. So. Rachel said she told her man once, and he he said, never tell me that again. Wow. I don't know. I got my own car. See, that's why I would never borrow someone else's unless I really had to. That's funny. That's funny though, Rachel. All right. Does anyone have any questions before I end it? Because I don't know. It looks good. Hopefully we will get to see Michael, it looks like, in the next chapter. We check in with Michael in the next chapter and we see how he's doing, which doesn't look like he's doing great. And so we will see Michael, and then we'll meet with our gang again. Unfortunately, it looks like there's more tests in chapter 8. More tests. But I think we just have to deal with her in this book, and then in the next book, and then after that, not as much, from my recollection of what Jess said. I think we only have to deal with her a lot in this book in Little Green Men, and then after that we're done with Tess for the most part. Yeah. Thank you, Deborah. I bought this poster specifically because it would be a good background for my lives. So, plus, it's like classic. It's like the classic season 1 poster. Like, I had to have it, had to have it. So, yeah. Yay. All right, you guys. I look forward to our next live on Friday, and then Saturday, rewatch party Into the Woods, 6 p.m. Central. Sunday, Zoom, 1 p.m. Central. DM me for the Zoom details if you want them. We'd love to have you if you can make it. And yeah. Oh, the poster, eBay. That's where I found it. I had to pay almost $40 for it with shipping, but I actually kind of ruined a little bit of the top, but you can't really tell from here. I don't know if you can tell, but you can see on the side of Liz's head, it's kind of fringed a little bit, but that's because they sent it to me in a really small tube, and when I started to pull it out, it started to do that. It started to ruin it, so I had to put it back in, take it back out more carefully. It was the whole thing, but I was able to take it out without any more damage. But yeah, that was interesting. I wish it was in a bigger tube, that it was easier to take out. So anyway, yeah, but I got it. I'm excited. Lots of Roswell stuff. Oh, good, Becky. You can't tell. I'm glad, because I can tell exactly where the damage is. But that's just me. I'm OCD about those things. So, all right. You can look forward later this week. I just finished a Harry and Hermione video on my YouTube channel, by the way. So if you're a Harry and Hermione fan, DM me if you want the link to that video. But I'm on YouTube at X Creative Christy X, by the way, and I will be starting my Roswell videos. So I'm doing one for Jess, which is going to be a Jason Bear, Dreamer, Max Evans type video to Sex and Candy, and I'm working on that this week, so you can look forward to that. I will post that when it's finished, which hopefully will be by Sunday, because that's when someone's birthday is. So you can look forward to that, and yeah, so I will see you Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Love you guys, and yeah. All right. Good night, everybody.